Hello everyone, this is our 7th lab for MECE 390 and today we'll be discussing curve fitting and regression analysis. In this video we will review the general linear least square regression method and I'll show you a quick example using it, and also how in some cases you can do linearization of the functions, and then I'll walk you through the code that was provided to you in the assignment. And finally, I'll give you some tips about how you can store the data as .mat files and how you can load them into your own scripts and workspace, which can be very convenient. If we have two datasets, x and y, we can fit a mathematical model, y of x, between the data points. The model is linear with respect to the unknown coefficients a of n, but it can be nonlinear with respect to x. So it has the following form. As you can see, y of x is a function of both the unknown coefficients a and the generic functions f1 of x, f2 of x, and fm of x. So as an example, if you want to fit your model using a linear model, f1 of x would be simply equal to 1 and f2 of x would be equal to x. If you want to use a second order polynomial, f1 of x, f2 of x, and f3 of x will take the following forms. Similarly for a sine model. So using the datasets x and y and the assumed function fm of x, we can solve for the unknown coefficients if we set them up in the matrix form like this. So basically for regression analysis, all what we're trying to do is to solve for the unknown coefficients a1, a2, and a3, and am. So let's do a quick example. You have seen the following dataset before in the previous assignment, and it asks you to interpolate between the points using a fourth order polynomial. However, in this example, we're interested in fitting a second order polynomial for the dataset, which means that my curve doesn't necessarily have to pass through all the points. So a second order polynomial would need three generic functions. So the first one would be equal to 1, the second function f2 would be equal to x, and f3 would be equal to x squared. And so my mathematical model would have this form. In order to solve for a1, and a2, and a3, I need to set up my system of linear equations like this. And this can be easily done on Excel. So here you find my data points x and y, which is in this case n and p, and the functional forms evaluated for each point. And then I need to start construct the matrix, and this can be easily done by taking the product of the functions and the points. So for example, the first element of the matrix is simply the product of f1 and x1 for all the points, and then we take the summation of them. Notice that I only need to evaluate 6 elements for this matrix because the matrix is symmetric. So you can fully define it using the 6 elements over the diagonal. And then you can similarly evaluate the right hand side, which is simply the product between the y dataset and the functional forms. So y times f1, and y times f2, y times f3, so on, and then we do the summation again. And then we'll have our system of linear equations, which we can solve for the h. So once you have the system of linear equations, you can solve for a1, a2, and a3 using any of the methods that you have learned before in the previous section. And as a check, I used MATLAB's curve fitting toolbox, which has a variety of functions, as we have discussed in the previous activity. So you can find that the coefficients are the same, except that MATLAB starts with the highest power. Here we started with the lowest power, so they are exactly the same values. And as you can see that the model doesn't necessarily have to pass through all the points, and it has an R-square value of 0.96. For this assignment, you also need to remember that in some cases you can transform the function and the data set so that you can be able to use the linear regression form. So for some functions, you can do some transformations in order to apply the concepts that we've mentioned before. So you need to review this part and this part from the lecture notes in order to be able to solve this part of the assignment. So we have just seen how we can solve the problem in Excel. In this assignment, you're required to use the function fitCurve to solve for your problem. The function takes the datasets x and y, and you should note that x and y must be rows, otherwise you will get a dimension error, and you also need to define your base function or your generic functions. As you can see, the main part of the code is that you set up the linear system of equations, and this is done through a nested loop. And then once you have the system of equations, you can calculate the coefficients A by doing a simple inversion, and then we can calculate the R² value. In order to use fitCurve, you need to first define x, y, and the base function. So I will show you later on in this video a method of importing external data into MATLAB script files. However, there are different methods that you can do this, and you discuss some of them in class. Here I will show you a different method than the one that you already discussed in class. So dataset has x1, x2, and y1 and y2. I already defined this, and I will show you how you can do that. So as you can see, x1 is defined as a column vector, and we need to convert it to a row. So I did this using the transpose command in order to be consistent with the fitCurve function. I did the same for y, and for the base function, we can use the inline function, or sorry, the anonymous function feature in MATLAB. So this is how you can define a function inside MATLAB script file. Or you can also use an external function like this. So you can do this or that, it doesn't matter, whichever is convenient for you. You should notice that the function is defined as a column, like in the Excel file. Since I'm using the generic function of 1 plus ax, which is the linear model, the first part here is just like a columns of ones based on the size of the x dataset, and x here is my second generic function. If I had a third function, it would be like this if I'm using a second order polynomial, but here I'm simply using the first order regression. And then I will be able to call the function and run it properly. So this is how you can use fitCurve. So I wanted to conclude this video by showing you how you can import and load data into MATLAB. From the Home tab here, you'll be able to find the Import Data feature of MATLAB. Click it, and then you'll be able to browse for folders and select folders of different types. Excel type is one of them, and txt is another type of them. So once you choose the file that you want to import the data from, the import feature will load this interface, and it will ask you to choose the type of data, the type of output data that you want. So it can be in the form of a table, or a matrix, or vectors, or an array. Here in this case we want it to be in the form of column vectors, so I'll choose this type. And there's also an option that tells you which row has the name of the variables. So I chose it to be row 1, and then you can just click import. Once you click import, the variables x and y will be transferred to your workspace environment. And so now if you try to call it, you'll find that x is now defined as a column vector. So this is how you can import data, and this can be very useful for large files. In order to save it into an external .mat file, all you really need to do is to just use the command save and give the file name, example data set, and then you'll notice that now in your current folder a new file called dataset.mat has been created. It will contain x and y. To simply load it into a script or into your workspace, let's clear first the environment. So now it's removed. In order to load it, you can just use the command load and then write the name of the file, dataset.mat. And as you can see now, once you make this command, the variables x and y will appear in your workspace. So you can use this in your workspace, in your command window, or in your script file. So this is how you can easily load the data from an external file in MATLAB.